Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding a massive financial trap that is quietly lurking inside almost every large organization, the enterprise SaaS spending trap. We're going to reveal exactly when it's time to stop endlessly renting your software and when you absolutely need to start strategically building your own. It's a critical conversation for your architecture, so let's just jump right in. Let's kick things off with a number that's, frankly, kind of hard to swallow: $19.8 million. That is what the average enterprise is literally wasting every single year on idle, completely unused software licenses. It's astronomical, right? You could fund an entire new department with that cash. But here's the catch. Simply going in and cutting those unused seats, that doesn't actually cure the disease. It's just treating a symptom. To fix this for good, we have to look a lot deeper. So how did we get here? Well, let's look at the underlying market mathematics. The landscape right now is completely reframing how we look at vendor rationalization. This is no longer just a routine IT housekeeping chore. It has absolutely become a top priority architectural conversation for CFOs everywhere. Look at the paradox we're dealing with today. Enterprise app counts are basically flat. The average organization is hovering around 305 apps, which is just a tiny dip of less than 1/10%. But at the exact same time, your software bills are skyrocketing by 8%. We're talking $55.7 million annually on average. Think about that for a second. You aren't buying more software. You are just paying a massive premium for the exact same toolkit you already had. And you know what's pouring gasoline on that inflation? Artificial intelligence. Vendors are aggressively layering these new AI consumption charges right over your base subscriptions. But it's not like your budget is magically growing to accommodate that. According to the Creative Strategies E/AI Index, 72 cents of every incremental AI dollar literally has to be squeezed out of your existing software allocations. So your AI roadmap and your vendor consolidation strategy, they aren't two different things anymore. They're the exact same conversation. Faced with these soaring costs, you can probably guess what happens next. Survey data shows that about 68% of tech leaders are staring down a pretty ambitious 20% consolidation target. They need to cut costs, and fast. But relying on your standard license harvesting playbook to hit that number? That is a dangerous trap. Let me walk you through how this typically decays over a year. Quarter 1, procurement comes in, reclaims a bunch of licenses, gets a quick 15% win, and everyone gives high fives. But then quarter 2 hits. Business units run into roadblocks and quietly start buying tools on corporate credit cards. Boom, you lose 5% to shadow IT. Quarter 3 rolls around, and those invisible auto-renewals kick in, eroding another 12%. And by quarter 4, usage-based AI penalties and new seat additions completely wipe out whatever savings you had left. Your app count might look a bit smaller on paper, but your total spend matches last year. You are right back at square one. So, to permanently stop this financial merry-go-round, we have to move way beyond simple procurement audits. We need to treat this as a strict architectural strategy, using a highly disciplined triage framework. Before anybody cuts anything, you've got to segment the portfolio. If you apply a blanket 20% cut across the board, you are going to cause immediate operational chaos. Instead, bucket your tools into 3 tiers. First, critical systems, your core ERP or CRM. This is the operational bedrock. It has massive data gravity. Second, supporting tools. These keep the lights on daily but don't really give you a unique competitive edge. This tier right here, this is your most fertile ground for a build versus buy analysis. Finally, optional tools. Those decentralized, highly redundant point solutions that you can usually just kill off entirely. Once you've got everything tiered, every single application has to pass through a rigorous decision test. No internal politics, just pure strategy. It lands in one of 3 definitive buckets. Kill means you terminate the contract and force a migration to whatever your enterprise standard is. Keep means you renew, but you aggressively negotiate those multi-year discounts. And finally, rebuild. This is where you let the contract expire and transition to owned, highly tailored custom software. Now, let's zoom in on our primary focus for today, that rebuild bucket. We really need to unpack the precise conditions where owning the software undeniably beats renting it. Let's be totally honest for a second here. Rebuilding custom software to replace an off-the-shelf SaaS product, it's a mistake the vast majority of the time. Truly. So how do you spot that exact highly specific class of applications that genuinely justifies a massive custom development effort? It really boils down to a strict intersection of two factors. An app only earns a ticket to the rebuild zone when it sits directly in the crosshairs of high recurring spend and highly proprietary workflow. Think about it. If it's a generic commodity, you keep renting it. If it's proprietary but cheap, you tolerate it. But if you have a high-volume operational layer, say a custom analytics engine, that is ridiculously expensive and completely unique to your business, that is your prime target for a rebuild. But you know what the absolute strongest red flag is? It's a vendor pricing model that actively penalizes your company for growing. When a vendor ties their pricing strictly to your API call volume, the gigabytes of data you process, or total active users, your SaaS bill starts scaling exponentially right alongside your revenue. They are literally turning your success into an unmanageable financial penalty. When you see that happening, you've got to take back control. Before you fire up the engineering team, though, pulling the trigger on a custom rebuild requires a brutally honest, multi-year look at the financial realities and the risks involved. There is one fatal mistake people make all the time in a build versus buy analysis. They compare the annual SaaS license fee directly against the upfront engineering costs of a custom app. It's a total false equivalency, apples to oranges. A defensible total cost of ownership has to include the whole shebang: infrastructure hosting, continuous security patching, data storage, and the internal engineering hours needed to actually support it. Let's put this into a realistic 5-year perspective. Renting a SaaS tool might run you $1.45 million over 5 years, especially once you bake in those compounding 10% year-over-year vendor price hikes. Now, the custom rebuild, that demands a steep $380,000 upfront engineering investment, plus all the ongoing maintenance. But check this out. Over 5 years, the build totals $860,000. It typically crosses the break-even line right in the middle of year 3. And by year 5, owning that software keeps nearly $600,000 from walking right out the door of your business. That being said, we definitely need to talk about when not to build. Actually, building is a massive strategic failure if you were trying to recreate commodity tools, like generic HR or payroll software. Why reinvent the wheel? It's also a failure if you try to chase 100% feature parity with a massive market leader like Salesforce. You only want to build the 20% of features that actually power your proprietary workflow. And crucially, a rebuild will crash and burn if you don't have a permanent engineering team to maintain it. Without ongoing maintenance, your shiny new build turns into toxic technical debt in about 2 years. Okay, so let's say the math works and it makes absolute strategic sense. You still have to carefully navigate the massive transitional friction and the internal governance needed to actually execute this thing without blowing up the business. First up, you have to account for data gravity. This is the operational pull that happens when a platform just accumulates so much historical context that your daily workflows and API integrations are completely glued to it. Uprooting that is no joke. Plus, you absolutely have to model for dual-run overlap costs. There's going to be a period, usually 3 to 9 months, where you are literally paying 2 rents at once: the incumbent SaaS vendor and your new custom build. This overlap can spike your temporary run costs by millions, and you really need to be ready for it. And here's the kicker for why IT cannot just push a button and make this happen alone. Business units actually control a staggering 81% of SaaS spend right now. Central IT directly manages a measly 15%. So if IT tries to play bad cop, arbitrarily cutting licenses or forcing a custom build based just on login metrics, those business units are just going to go behind their backs and spin up more expensive shadow IT to get their tools back. So to actually pull this off, you need a tri-party governance model. You get finance in the room to track the real savings, preventing that nasty 4-quarter decay we talked about. IT evaluates the architecture, the security risks, and the deep integrations. And the business units, they define the actual operational necessity and validate that the custom rebuild is going to support what they do every day. When you get these 3 groups aligned, this stops being a miserable cost-cutting exercise and actually becomes a durable, long-term architectural strategy. Which brings us to our final thought. As you look at your own enterprise software stack today, ask yourself this one critical question. Are you going to keep endlessly renting your workflows, essentially paying a penalty for your own success? Or is it finally time to start strategically owning your operational growth? It's a heavy question, but with the framework we unpacked today, you've got exactly what you need to answer it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I hope this empowers you to take total control of your software architecture.